Now starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 24th webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This and all subsequent sessions will be available on makara.us under the subheading MF Webinars or Mori Federation Webinars. Okay, as is our habit, we'll start by checking in on HPB and Colonel Olcott. Last month found them home in Bombay. This month has him on the road again in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. So can we get a reader for this paragraph?
Karen, can you read that for us, please? I'm sorry, Carrie.
Okay.
Thank you.
If anyone fancies that the influence which our society enjoys in the East has been gained without hard work, he should look through the pages of this diary. Day after day, week after week, and month after month are to be seen the records of journeys taken in all sorts of conveyances, from the railway carriage to the ramshackle little hackney, jutka and ekka, drawn by a single pony or bullock, to the common cart with its huge wheels, its bottom of bamboo poles, sometimes thinly covered with straw, and its pair of high-humped Indian oxen straining at their yoke. A thick pole laid across their tired necks and tied to them by coir, fiber from the outer husk of the coconut, ropes, two roughly built boats covered with arches of dried palm leaves, but with neither bench nor cushion, to elephants carrying us in their howdahs, or more frequently on great pads, which are simply mattresses, belted around them by giant girths. Journeyings by clear days are recorded here, and days of pouring tropical rains, nights of moonlight, of starlight, and heavy showers. Nights sometimes when sleep is broken by the ear-splitting sounds of the jungle insect world, the horrid yelp of the jackal pack, the distant noise of wild elephants pushing through the cane groves, the ceaseless shouts of the driver to his lagging bullocks, and his country songs, mostly in falsetto, and usually discordant to keep himself awake. Then the mosquitoes swarming about you in the cart with their exasperating drone, menacing slow torture and white lumps swelling on the skin. Then the arrivals at villages in the dawn, the people all clustered along the road to meet you, the curiosity that must be gratified, the bath under difficulties, the early breakfast of coffee and appas, a thickish sort of rice cakes with fruit, the visit to the monastery, the discussion of plans and prospects with the Buddhist monks, the lecture in the open air, or if there be one, the preaching pavilion, with a great crowd of interested brown-skinned people watching you and hanging on your interpreter's lips.
Thank you, Carrie. Well, I know there's at least one new attendee today, so I wanted to mention that this is a diary. It exists in 5 volumes. We're on the 2nd volume. And I'm thinking that we'll probably end up just getting through the diaries as we get through this first volume of a Secret Doctrine. But anyway, so when you see HPB and Colonel Olcott, they were comrades, and they were in India in the 80s, 1880s. And the book that we're now reading was written in 1888 by HPB, who is H.P. Blavatsky. So just an update on that. And now let's pick up where we left off last month with the commentary on Stanza 3, verse 6, which reads, "The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, or father and mother." So if we could get a reader for the last little bit of the commentary on verse 6 here.
Tia, can you read that for us, please? You're self-muted. Well, I guess we don't have her there. How about, let's see, Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
The root of life was in every drop in the ocean of immortality. Can you hear me?
You can just read the
Hello?
commentary. Hello?
Hello, the number
Yes.
6?
Just read the commentary down below, please. Starting with Daemon et Deus.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Daemon est Deus in versus. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible he is called the Son of God. See Job. The bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. See Isaiah. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel who sprang from the depths of chaos was called Lux, in brackets Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning, or Manvantaric dawn. He was transformed by the church into Lucifer or Satan, because he is higher and older than Jehovah, and had to be sacrificed to the new dogma. See Book 2.
Thank you. First of all, when the way I work these is that I always keep the verse in black up at the top. I always keep it in full font so that you have that as a reference. But in terms of reading, usually, unless I specifically ask you to reread the verse, we just read the commentary down below. It's just the method that I've been using. So I know it can be confusing. Okay, well, if you know, this is the kind of paragraph that could have gotten you burned at the stake a couple of 100 years ago. And you know, it's this issue that still creates a rift between theosophy and traditional Christianity, this elevation of Lucifer, right? So let's take a look at the Theosophical Glossary entry on Lucifer, as well as a quote from the second volume of the Secret Doctrine. Can we get a reader for, let's divide this in half. We'll have the first person read the first two paragraphs, and then another read the third paragraph.
Okay, let's start with Scott, and then afterwards we'll go to Anne Veronica.
Yes, Anubis is a good choice.
Thank you. Lucifer, Latin, light bringer. Greek, phosphorus or L-phosphorus, dawn bringer. The planet Venus, the morning star. Lucifer is light bringer to Earth, not only physically as the brightest of the planets, but in a mystical sense also. In mysticism, he is the chief of those minor powers, or logi, who are said to rebel against high heaven and to be cast down to the bottomless pit, the so-called war in heaven and the fall of the angels. This allegory is found also in the legend concerning Prometheus, in the Hindu Mahashura, who rebels against Brahma and is cast by Shiva into Patala, and in the Scandinavian Loki. The cyclic sweep of evolution, spirit has first to descend or become involved in differentiation and in the worlds of matter, so that worlds and beings may be brought forth and evolved. The logi who thus bring the light may allegorically be said, like Prometheus, to steal the fire, and their assertion of divine free will may be construed into an act of evolutionary rebellion, yet such is their karmic function as well as duty. Lucifer has been transformed in later Occidental theology into a synonym for the evil one or the devil. If the God Jehovah were the highest divinity, which this Jewish tribal deity is not, then any power withstanding him must necessarily be considered to be his adversary. And in the same way, the teaching as to the imminent Christ, not only in the world, but in each individual person, not being altogether agreeable with the doctrine of salvation by faith in an external Savior, became transformed into the tempter, inspiring man to sinful rebellion against God. Lucifer, in a very real sense, a very true sense, stands for the self-conscious mind in man, which is ever once tempter and enlightener, tempter in its lower aspects, and enlightener and inspirer in its higher.
Thanks, Scott. Okay.
Now I'm trying to go to Anne Veronica, but I see two of her. Okay, there you go. Can you talk, Anne Veronica?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. You're echoing really bad.
I fixed it. Is it okay now?
Yes.
That's good.
Okay. In this case, it is but natural, even from the dead letter standpoint, to view Satan, the serpent of Genesis, as the real creator and benefactor, the father of spiritual mankind. For it is he who was the harbinger of light, bring radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automaton created by Jehovah, as alleged, and he who was the first to whisper, in the day ye eat thereof, ye shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil, can only be regarded in the light of a Savior, an adversary to Jehovah, the personating spirit. He still remains in esoteric truth, the ever-loving messenger, the angel, the seraphim, the cherubim, who both knew well and loved still more, and who conferred on us spiritual instead of physical immortality. The latter, a kind of static immortality that would have transformed man into an undying, wandering Jew.
Thank you. So do you get the difference between the two qualities being described here in terms of Lucifer and Jehovah? In Lucifer, you have the bringer of the light of mind, which is, of course, higher as well as lower, which is, you know, why it's can be a tempter as well as an enlightener. And in Jehovah, you have the the creator of, or one of many, who work to create the form aspect. And that's why that very last phrase, the latter, a kind of static immortality that would have transformed man into an undying wandering Jew, meaning that it would have been without the spirit infused mind aspect, it would have just been one can't really even imagine this. It wouldn't have been on the physical plane, obviously, but a kind of form aspect, you know, not blessed with higher mind, that therefore would be, in a sense, condemned to the lower regions, which is, of course, just our own mental, astral and physical conditions. And that's the difference between these two. Here's Prometheus and Lucifer. Striking resemblance, huh? And here's their Hindu and Norse equivalents, Mahasura and Loki. Two key thoughts in this description of Lucifer popped out for me. In the cyclic sweep of evolution, spirit has first to descend or become involved in differentiation and the worlds of matter, so that worlds and beings may be brought forth and evolved. So, if somebody asks you, hey, what's it all about? Anybody, you could trot that line out. This is the law of sacrifice at work at the highest levels. Sacrifice. Law of sacrifice as it affects deity. And the other quote that I thought was important is, and it helps, it helps us understand this dual quality of Lucifer. Lucifer, in a very true sense, stands for the self-conscious mind in man, which is at once tempter and enlightener. Tempter in its lower aspect, and enlightener and inspirer in its higher. This describes the effect of the bringing in of the fire of mind. Lucifer himself is, of course, not directly a tempter, as the church believes, but rather has provided through the fire of mind the means by which humanity is given a choice, either to build an ever stronger personality identification through lower mind, or to build the antikarana that leads to triadal consciousness. HPB showed her high regard and her courage when she named her theosophical magazine Lucifer. I mean, can you imagine in 19th century Europe calling your spiritual magazine Lucifer? Here's a close-up of the bottom portion, which reads, "The light bearer is the morning star Lucifer, and Lucifer is no profane or satanic title. He is the Latin Luciferus, the light bringer, the morning star, the name of the pure, pale herald of daylight," by Jung. Okay. Any thoughts or questions, discussion points about Lucifer, this whole idea? Anyone? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Anne Veronica says, is there a connection with the solar angels and their sacrifice to build and watch over the soul?
It actually, the work of a Prometheus Lucifer type being makes the soul to personality connection possible, because in bestowing the fire of mind, that connection can then be built to the solar angels. Anyone else?
Yes, we have two hands. We'll go first to Carrie and then to Scott.
Yeah, Carrie.
Go ahead, you're self-muted, Carrie. There.
Francis, could you go back to those illustrations, the gods?
Oh, the gods, yeah, sure.
Yeah, because there seems to be some discrepancy between, I mean, they're all very different, first of all, and Loki surprises me because I thought that was Mercury.
Oh, well, that's...
He doesn't look like...
Yeah, well, Loki came up in her description of being a Luciferian in type. And, you can make an argument for the higher end, Mercury is dual in that it represents, in one sense, higher and lower mind. So you can, there is that connection. So I'm not surprised that, Loki represents mind. And there's also much more of a trickster aspect to Loki than you find, for instance, with Mahasura. The Indians are very familiar with this idea of, like Kali, who on the surface or from the point of view of appearances would seem to be, destructive, but when in fact, that which is being destroyed, of course, is the form aspect to release the inner spirit. So this is something, much more familiar to the Indian state of mind, right?
Okay, thanks. I understand now.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't do a deep background on Loki, so it would be interesting to see how how he fits in, how they regard him.
Yeah, I just know through the ring that Loga is the trickster, and He doesn't seem to bear any resemblance to Lucifer as such.
Yeah, interesting though that, you know, Loki and Logi, isn't it? You know, because ultimately these, you know, these great sacrificial beings are Logi. You know, I'm not talking specifically about, you know, this particular list, but all Logi are following the law of sacrifice. And their sacrifice is the true sacrifice. Our sacrifice is when we follow the law, is to sacrifice the personality in order to come in contact with the soul. But I love
where is that Lucifer? Where is that from? It's fantastic.
Oh, it's from a church it's from a church in Germany. I don't have it right in front of me. I don't have the specifics. I want to say Staten is kind of what's floating in my memory. But
okay,
yeah.
Thanks, Francis. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's interesting, though. You know, of course, in ancient Greek times, there was the only repercussions didn't come from the institution; it came from Zeus himself. You know, in his punishment of Prometheus, you know, by chaining him to a rock and having the eagle eat his liver on a daily basis, you know. But he was regarded by the Greeks, you know, as a great god. So it kind of, this whole idea went underground with the Christian church until, in a sense, rescued by certain philosophical schools and by theosophy, ultimately, you know.
Francis?
So, yeah.
I noticed Scott put his hand down, but we've got a couple of comments, and one of them fits in with what you were just saying. Anne Veronica says, why was Prometheus punished so hard for bringing the fire? Is considered in Greek mythology a great sin.
Well, you know, it's a really interesting story. And the idea behind this whole war in heaven is that the natural order of things was for the form aspect to evolve on its own time scale. And you're talking about, you know, trillions of years of unfoldment. And in part, that's why this experiment, and DK calls it an experiment, of initiation was brought forth, right? And of course, initiation is only possible through the fire of mind and through the interference, if you look at it from a certain perspective, of those beings called solar angels. They're actually, you know, interfering with our normal progression, which would be what beings such as Jehovah and Zeus were supporting. And so that's the story behind it. You know, of course, there's a tremendous secret mystery involved in this. It's the most provocative concept. So what we have, you know, for instance, in the punishment of Prometheus, you know, is allegorical. You know, I mean, there's some obvious symbols. He's tied to a rock. So what does that tell you? You know, he's tied, he had to incarnate. He had to come down to the physical plane. That's what tied to a rock or chained to a rock could mean. You know, having his liver eaten every day, well, maybe that's just a metaphor for incarnation. You know, these beings incarnated and propagated the species in such a way that the fire of mind was able to then come forth. Anyone else? I see a hand.
Yeah, we've got Scott's hand's back up again, so let's go to him, and then we have more comments.
Okay. I was going to mention what's in the glossary, Theosophical glossary. I don't know if you're going to mention the thing about Milton. I thought that was an interesting quote in there. It says, Before Milton, Lucifer had never been a name of the devil. And also thinking about Earth being a third-rate planet, and hence mental at an abstract level. Brings Prometheus and the whole experiment to us.
Yeah, that is interesting. I have to let my cat out.
Go for it.
There you go. Job done. Okay. Yeah, say a little more about that. The idea that it's a third ray. Well, of course, you know, it's a first ray monad, second ray soul, third ray personality. So, and of course, humanity at this point is aligned with that third ray personality for the most part, even though their true origins are in that first and second rays. So how do you specifically see Prometheus as being, well, you know, Greece is third ray. So there's that. One of the rays given, you know, by DK concerning Greece is third ray, and it's hard to imagine that he was really talking about modern Greece. It seems much more likely that he was talking about ancient Greece.
Yeah, well, I think, like you're saying, Prometheus, this is his sacrifice, and the bringing of light and fire into bringing mind to man, because before that it was just an animal form, right? Yeah. Seems appropriate into a third-ray body of a planet to bring light to it, because that's what's necessary for third ray, that it would descend in a third-ray planet in such a metaphor, such an allegory. Because that's the experiment clearly that is being done here, as well as with the other third-rate planets of Mars and Saturn in some way, perhaps.
Yeah, you know, it makes me think of the first verse of the Great Invocation, right? From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Of course, then it moves to let, you know, may Christ descend on earth. So it's a, you know, this is the light aspect of the second principle, but your point is taken. You know, the idea of the illumined mind is very much a third-rate quality. Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Yeah, we have quite a few comments here. So let's go. Julie says, in Revelation 22:16, John has Jesus saying, I am the bright and morning star.
Yikes, isn't that fabulous?
So
yeah.
We are to know that Jesus Christ consciousness as Lucifer is her question.
Well, you know, you can be one with, all you have to do is add the quality of identification, right? It's very much like when Christ said, you know, only through me can you reach my Father's house. I'm paraphrasing, and of course, you know, the church took it in the worst possible way, which is that you had, you know, by creating a creed, you know, an exclusive creed where only through this personage that was an avatar, or that was overshadowed by Christ, that only through that personage, you know, a belief in that personage. But of course, in fact, he was talking about a principle. And in that comment in Revelation, you are moving much more to that universal recognition of the principle. And at that level, certainly, I mean, how could you describe Christ in any other way but a light bringer, you know? So I'm sure that they are strongly identified with each other. Of course, you know, I don't know of any occult, specific occult information about the nature of their connection, but you just can't imagine that they're other than completely identified. Yeah, so anyone else?
Yes, we got several more comments. Okay, so Laura says, Maybe the Bible's description of Lucifer is not completely accurate, and maybe at some point some confusions were created, which would be totally understandable, since these are very complex concepts and realities which we don't even fully understand today. However, the Bible also refers to Lucifer as an evil entity, which, well, exists. I mean, we only have to look at the world as it is now and as it was. I just don't think the Bible description is completely wrong. Maybe there are two different entities that have received the same name in the Bible. What does Madame Blavatsky say about evil? Because evil is more than an abstract concept. It is reality, unfortunately.
Well, and I'll work backwards. First of all, abstract concepts are usually more real than reality because they inform our, quote, outer reality. And the evil that we see in the world is, for the most part, created through the fact that we are not yet one with the plan, that we are cut off and therefore working as personalities. So selfish humankind has wrought the evil that we see in the world. We don't need to look at some archdemon in order to find the root of selfishness, which then demonstrates in so many ways, you know, from global warming to worldwide poverty and hunger. You know, this root of that can be found in the fear and the selfish motivations of humanity. Now, you know, there is some recognition of demons, you know, like Beelzebub and such as that. But this specific reference to Lucifer, as Scott just pointed out, was actually created by Milton. When did he write? About the 1600s, wasn't it? Or was it earlier than that? I don't remember. But so, you know, long, at any rate, long after the Bible was codified, you know, I hear, is that Scott on the line?
Yeah, I unmuted him in case he could answer your question.
Yeah.
Just gonna look him up. I think that was about right. Let's see. Milton was 1608 to 1674, so 17th century.
Yeah, I was hearing in my mind 1650. You know,
that's all right.
So, you know, if you think about it, you know, we had the Bible was completely in was in its final stages before, you know, the well, there were some later changes, but, you know, the Bible was fully formed by the time that Lucifer was, you know, became this devil-like being in the eyes of the church. You know, it's just an unfortunate bringing into ill repute of one of the great saviors of humankind. Indeed. And, you know, it's interesting, this statue, which is in front of a church, I mean, I sure don't see an evil demon sitting here before us, you know. And this is clearly a statue of later than the Middle Ages. You know, but, you know, your point is well taken that there is evil in the world. But I think when you really meditate on the source of that, you find that, and very much the whole origins of evil has to do with an analogy for that which exists in the separated human self. So, and you know what? There's going to be more discussed on that topic as we move forward. So hang in there, and I'm with you. There's great truths in the Bible, and sometimes they're just blinded or mixed up through translation or on purpose by the institutions involved in order to consolidate their power. That happened with the Nicene Creed way back in the 300 AD, you know, where they very purposely deleted certain ideas in order to consolidate their power. But we'll be running into more commentary on this idea of personified evil. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of comments. So, Anne Veronica says the liver, if I remember well, in esoteric healing, is a double chakra. It is a portal to the etheric body and a portal to the physical body.
Interesting. Okay, so that just that makes the metaphor even clearer. That the portal to the physical body. I mean, that sounds to me like a perfect metaphor for reincarnation. So yeah, I like. Thanks for that bit of information. It's quite interesting.
And then Anne Veronica also said or asks, is the ancient Greek philosophy under the third ray? Oh, is all the ancient Greek philosophy under the third ray?
Well, from one point of view, you could say all philosophy as a separate discipline is strongly influenced by the third ray, because the third ray is the ray of abstract thought. And that's one definition of philosophy, is to consider the abstract. So yes, and I think one of the reasons you could kind of turn that, wag the dog with the tail here, that one of the reasons that Greece was a center for the development of Western philosophy is because it was a third-rate country. So it was naturally conditioned, you could say, as an environment, an abstract environment, for the development of philosophical forms, right? If this is of particular interest to you, I just recommend you also within my webinar.
We just kind of lost you a little bit there, Francis.
Hello?
Okay, you're back. You were very light there for a minute.
Back off.
I just wanted to let you know that Anne Veronica is from Greece.
Oh, how terrific. Oh, that's great. So I don't know where you lost me, but I will reiterate what I said.
No, it was just that last sentence.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the heads up. I'll be on it a little better here. Okay.
Lots more. Michael says 2 comments. In some versions, Prometheus was giving powers to the animals, and when he got to humans, there were none left. So he gave us fire, the fire of mind. And second, Loki is involved in the end of the world in the battle Ragnarok with the Fenris wolf and a giant serpent.
Well, there's layers and layers there that would be interesting to unravel. Once if we go all the way through the Secret Doctrine together, you will find that you have automatically been given a key of understanding when you read mythology. Just certain symbols, certain storylines will just reveal themselves because because theosophical thought itself is a key of understanding. So it's interesting. Thanks for that comment.
And then Antonella, we got a couple comments from her. She says, Father, Atma, Christ, Buddhi, Lucifer equals Manus. Atma is veiled and expressed by Buddhi, and Buddhi by Manus.
When you're looking from the bottom up, exactly, right. You could see them as themselves being veils, And again, the form aspect, which the highest development of the form aspect is the mind, is eventually has to be superseded. It has to be graduated from, just in the same way that the causal body has to be destroyed, So, the light of mind is still mind-based. And at some point, one moves beyond that. But that's a stage that is taken on, at the level third, fourth, fifth initiation and above, you know, in varying degrees, you know, where the mind is transformed. And that the vehicle of mind as a subject-object process of understanding is superseded with the intuition, which is one of knowing, just knowing, right? So learning becomes wisdom, and knowledge becomes knowing or wisdom. Anyone else?
Yeah, she followed that up with Lucifer equals higher Manus and lower Manus or Kama Manus. So, you know, there's different layers of it that then get transformed.
Yeah, he brought the fire of mind, which is dualistic. It's lower and higher manas. In the lower, we can get trapped. You know, the eighth sphere, which some of you have heard of, which is the true hell, is an adjunct of lower mind. It's not automatic. You have to develop it over thousands of lifetimes to codify your identity in the personality and snap your connection with soul. You're trapped in lower mind, right? But that was, of course, never part of the plan. There's just this very, very rare occasional human unit takes that path, right? But nonetheless, it is part of the freedom and the choice given by through the fire of mind, right? But you have to look at the actual meaning of the word Lucifer. Light bearer. Lux is light, right? One who bears the light. You know, how that can be demonic is beyond me. So, anyone else?
Yes. Michael says, once we buy into separation, all manner of darkness has ingress.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, then you know, you don't have to look very far at all. Like, you know, for instance, in yourself, for the source of quote evil unquote. You know, yeah, it's all around us, and it's alive in the world today, boy. Anyone else?
Yes, I have one more comment, but I wanted to make a comment myself. You know, I always think of Lucifer as one of the first fallen angels, but, you know, that represented man. We all had to fall into matter, and our first job was to immerse ourselves in it, and he did. And then our job was to evolve up out of it and return back to ourself, our true self, you know, to the real. And I have to think after all of these eons that he has been able to do that just as well as the other masters and whatnot have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You know, I would hate for anybody to bring up all of my old things when I was, you know, a young soul and stupid and doing all kinds of evil things and hold that over my head for the rest of my eternity, you know.
Well, you could do a webinar series, BL, and just get it out in the open, you know.
Okay, and then Ishtar says, may I add a knowing evil is a created unconsciousness of separation from all consciousness and an identification to illusory material world as reality. The journey is to awaken to the fact. Duality is illusion.
Yeah, well said. Right. Of course, consciousness, you know, can be held before one is aligned with the soul. You still have a, you know, what's called the lower level of consciousness, you know. I wanted to comment on what you said. What I have up on the screen right now is in a sense what you were quoting, BL, when you were talking about the you know, there's a pejorative quality to the term fallen, especially when it's applied to angels, right? It suggests to become evil. But it also just means to move towards the material realm. And as you point out, in the cyclic sweep of evolution, spirit has first to descend or become involved in differentiation and in the worlds of matter, so that worlds and beings may be brought forth and evolved. So the sacrifice of ones such as Lucifer and Prometheus on, I'm going to say a personal level, which is of course not at all accurate, since these aren't separated personages, but belong to hosts of a unified consciousness, right? And I would differ with your idea, BL, in terms of Lucifer needing to work his way back up and out, that in this extraordinary being's own level of consciousness, he never had to lose touch with the higher realm. But just like the soul, there's a kind of duality to the soul. There's that aspect of the soul that is, you could say, lost or dissociated from itself through the process of incarnating, right? And then there's the soul on its own realm, in its own realm, which does not lose that. I think the same thing, they're both angels. The same thing could be said about Lucifer. So, okay, anyone else before we move on from this topic?
Yeah, we have a hand. I don't see it, but oh, there we go. Go ahead, please, Antonella. Hi.
Yes, hi, thank you. Yes, I was just reminding that the case says that on a macrocosmic level, the root of evil lays in unresolved or bad relationship between one Pleiades and one Rishi or the Great Bear. So this let us think that the necessity to begin a new cycle of incarnation or a new solar system in our case to resolve or to make this relationship between the two opposites better. And if we think that it really tells us that it's not evil per se, it's just the necessity to fall into matter to redeem it, and that is the spirit that redeems itself or its aspect as matter. So it's consoling.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. In that sense, and Antonella, we are ourselves logi. Now, don't get a big head, but in terms of the cells of each of our own bodies, we are the master point of unity, that allows them to work in a higher rhythm than they would be able to work otherwise. Once they disintegrate and become disintegrated atoms of substance, I'm not talking about atoms in terms of the materialistic understanding, but instead of being a part of this great atom that is a human being, that they become then associated with lesser atoms of substance. So it's a great evolutionary part of their little lives. To be a part of a human being. And that's an analogy for, humans as part of the planetary logos, etc., including these two stars. And, any idea of evil that you have that you're projecting on these two stars that are out of a line, you can just drop. I'm not talking to you, Antonella, I'm saying anyone in general who has this, that we're talking in a purely vibratory way, and we can't
yes,
really
no, oh, sorry. No, no, go on.
conceive of what, we can't really even conceive of what, cosmic, the nature of cosmic evil. But we do know that the hierarchy spends a lot of its, working hours shielding humanity from its influence. So it's very real, and it does have an effect on the planet.
Yeah, and also it lets us think that if the cosmic Christ, which is a symbol for our solar system, if you like, or our solar logos incarnated, and its feet, one foot is in the Pleiades, the other foot is in the Great Bear, and the head is in the Sirius. So it makes us think that in us there is this pattern, the paradigm that the matter comes from the feet, or is the source of is light and darkness together, and then Sirius is the principle to take consciousness, to resolve these two origins in a new relationship that is the incarnation of the current incarnation of the solar logos. Anyway, microcosm and macrocosm are the same, and
above, so below.
Thank you.
Some really useful insights on a macrocosmic level there. Thanks, Antonella.
Thanks to you.
Anyone else?
Nope, I think that's it right now.
Well, I think Lucifer is of some interest to this group. I can't remember a subject matter that brought forth this, was that stimulating. Interesting, isn't it? So, moving through the definitions. Okay, so we're going to move on from here. Find my way. Okay, having considered HPB's commentary on verse 6, mostly during the last webinar, that had a lot to do with our last webinar. Let's now revisit verse 6, which reads, "The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, or father and mother." So, we've been doing this for the last several verses, taken on this new discipline, which is to consider the verses themselves as though they were commentary. Because often HPB doesn't address whole sections of a verse. And so I think it's been useful to add this. So first we have the root of life, which is Oya Ohu the elder, who, quote, was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, right? This is the point in the center of the circle of every atom of substance, whose diversity is only apparent. For in truth, there is but one life, though represented by an infinite number of points in the outer realms. But it's really just one point. HPB says, deity, having its circumference everywhere, the boundless, has, therefore, its central point also everywhere. In other words, is in every point of the universe. This is a little different take on the usual way this is said. The separation between the father and mother, spirit and matter, is only apparent, not actual. As revealed by the Virgo keywords, I am the mother and the child. I, God, I, matter, am, right? Okay, the next line reads, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. As a result of darkness radiating light, described in verse 3, The ocean, which is primordial substance, the mother aspect, became light-filled, which is the effect of the fecundating male aspect that sprang forth from the virgin egg and thus initiated the Manvantara, the first, the first entity, you could say, or identity, and with it, the involutionary process. That radiant light is the fire of pure deity, which, quote, never burns, but sets on fire all that it touches. In verse 9, we will learn that the primordial light is cold flame, and that flame is fire. This is followed by the first involutionary descent, when fire produces heat, thus dropping away from the cold light, quote, from within outwards. Next we have, and motion. This is not the motion of pre-cosmic ideation in the great breath, that fundamental quality of motion, which is so often identified with universal mind. And it's been with us since verse 1 of the stanza. But rather a new motion, the involutional motion, now driven by cyclic periodical time. As a result of this descent into form, darkness vanished and was no more. Darkness disappears in its own essence within the body of fire and water, which is the outer garment of father and mother. Again, the disappearance is only apparent as the verse assumes the perspective of this stage of the path outward from pure spirit, right? So it disappears, you could say, into a more noumenal stage, which we've actually covered in previous verses, right? So at this stage of becoming, or this involutional level, pure spirit, which is Oya Ohu, the elder, has receded or disappeared. So yeah, that's my thumbnail analysis of verse 6. Do we have any final comments or questions on this verse? It's one of the real goodies in this, in all the stanzas, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of stanza 3. In coffee shops in the New Age, people sit around and talk about how cool stanza 3 is. We're not quite there yet. Okay, on to the amazing verse 7. One of the longest verses in all the stanzas, and in my humble opinion, one of the most extraordinary. We'll be considering this verse at least for the rest of this session, and there's no question of that, and probably most of the next. So let's see. Michael Robbins isn't with us, is he, Gail?
No, I don't see him.
No.
If you want that voice, Brendan is here.
Okay. Brendan, would you like to read this stanza?
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. Behold, O Lamb new, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled, refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, which emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is the Oeohu, the younger, the
blank.
He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is 4, and the 4 takes to itself 3. And the union produces the Sapra, in whom are the 7 which become the Tridasa, or the hosts and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen, as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters.
Thanks, Brennan.
You're welcome.
Okay. Both of the footnotes pertain to the verse itself. The first references Behold, O Lanu. It just simply says Lanu is a student. I would say, more likely a disciple, initiate / initiate. A chela who studies practical esotericism. The second footnote references, and the union produces the sapta, in whom are the seven which become the tridasha. Tridasha, or 3 times 10, which is 30, alludes to the Vedic deities in round numbers, or more accurately, 33, a sacred number. There are the 12 Adityas, the 8 Vasus, the 11 Rudras, and 2 Aswins, the twin sons of the sun and the sky. This is the root number of the Hindu pantheon, talking about 33, which enumerates 33 crores, or over 300 million of gods and goddesses. Extraordinary. So this may seem like a detail, but we're going to take a little side tutorial to acquaint ourselves with these Hindu deities and forces of nature before moving on to the verse itself, or the commentary on the verse. Remember, as we read this, that these are not separate entities that manifested along with Oyahu the Younger, but are rather aspects of this great being himself. So, in reading about these, we're actually reading about the nature of our solar logos, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to take the time to do it. They unfold successively on the involutionary arc, which we have just begun with this verse. So you could look at this as a way of getting to know the qualities of our solar logos. So could we get a reader for, let's start here. A reader for this first of the 4 groups that make up.
Leah, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. Right there, I've got a little. Adityas, Sanskrit, belonging to, issuing from Aditi, unbounded expanse. Sons of Aditi, space, in the Vedas, a name for the sun, also referred to variously as 5, 7, 8, and 12 in number. The Brahmanas and Puranas generally reckon 12 Adityas. When the pralaya, dissolution of the world comes, 12 suns will appear. The 12 Adityas are the 12 great gods of the Hindu pantheon. Also, the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year. The Adityas are the sustainers of the solar divine life, which exists in all things, and in our present Bhavasvata, Manvantara, they are the divine solar Petris, fathers, not the lower or lunar Petris, which incarnated in early humanity.
Thank you, Leah. So first of all, it's just the name of this current time of manifestation. It's the Vaishvata Manvantara. That's what that means. And if you're going to hold on to one sentence from this, it's that the Adityas are the sustainers of the solar divine life, which exists in all things. So it's very much like a Vishnu principle, which sustains that point in the center of the circle, that spark of life that is in the center of all manifestation, cells in the body, if you will, of this great being. Okay, so next up, somebody else, please.
Okay. Lona, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Vasus, Sanskrit, a class of 8 elemental gods called Astavasu, 8 Vasus, representing aspects of nature with 5 elements, Hansha Bhutas, and also representing cosmic natural phenomenon, the sun, the moon, and the stars. The name Vasu means brilliance and wealth givers. There are 8 among the 33 gods.
Thank you. So you have, earth, fire, wind, water, and ether would be, as well as certain entities in their abstract sense, like sun and moon and stars. So you could say that they define the nature of the environment, right? Think again, keep a hold of the idea that these are aspects of Oyaohu the Younger, the great singularity. Okay? Up next, the Rudras. Go get a reader.
Sure. Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Rudras, Sanskrit, from the verbal root rud, to weep. A class of monads or dhyani chohans belonging to the upper worlds of nature, whether of our solar system or planetary chain, virtually identical to the higher Manasaputras or Kumaras, who refuse to create, i.e., embody themselves in the then unprepared human vehicles. Certain individuals, from among the highest of the class, however, are among the very first to obey karmic law, and they incarnated in chosen vehicles of the third root race during this present 4th round.
Okay, hold on. Anybody recognize Lucifer in that? This is a description of this class of being that includes Prometheus and Loki, Lucifer, and the Mahasura. Go ahead.
The Rudras are therefore equivalent to the solar Ihas or Petris, as contrasted with the lower 4 classes of monads, the lunar Petris. The Rudra, who represent the intellectual informing principles of man, attain self-consciousness by individually passing through the equivalent of the human kingdom during previous evolutionary periods. They are mythologically said to be at war with the shadowy entities and powers of the lower spheres, and hence are sometimes spoken of as the destroyers of outward forms. The Rudras are here collectively spoken of as an individual equivalent to Shiva, who has always been recognized as the patron or chief of initiates and of occult training. Rudra is truly the Shiva of Rig Veda, and in many aspects the Agni of later writings. Like Shiva, Rudra is a beneficent deity because regenerating, and a mistaken maleficent deity because of destroying falsehoods and imperfections at the same time.
So you can see the strong similarity between this being not exactly the same, but very much holding those same qualities as we spent time studying before, right? Identical to the higher Manasaputras or Kumaras, right? Which are the bearers of higher mind and basically of salvation. So, we have in the Adityas, we have, the sustainers of that spark of life at the center of every separated human being. Then we have those elements that make up the environment that we live in and that the solar logos is moving into. And then we have these great beings who you could say incarnate through and with this singularity, which in our neck of the woods is the solar logos. You know, you can look at this locally and on cosmic levels. Mostly these stanzas have to do with our solar system, right? So Oya Ohu the Younger is, you know, our solar logos, or you can see it as that great third logos, you know, of the entire cosmos. Okay, and we have one final one, the Asvins. And any of you Geminis out there may want to pay attention to this one, even though he's riding a ram.
Marissa, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Asvins, Asvinu, Sanskrit, the two horsemen, two Vedic divinities, which in some respects parallel the Greek Dioscuri, Pollux, and Castor. Harbingers of Usas, the dawn. They are represented as twin horsemen, appearing in the sky in a golden chariot drawn by horses, birds, or rams. Since they precede the sun's rising, they are called the parents of the sun's form, Pushan. They are also the parents of Nakula and Sahadeva, Ashura's brothers by Madri. Many Vedic hymns are addressed to them. Their attributes pertain to youth and beauty, to speed, and to duality. They bring treasures to mankind, averting misfortune and sickness, for they are the two physicians of heaven. Yaska, the earliest known commentator on the Vedas, in his Nirukta writes that the Ashvinu represent the transition from darkness to light and are identified with heaven and earth. Blavatsky says that these twins are, in the esoteric philosophy, the Kumara egos, the reincarnating principles in his Ventura, that the Greek Dioscuri were respectively the son of Zeus and the son of a mortal, in a direct reference to the dual character of the Kumaric mind, or the higher manas, an immortal quality in human beings in its higher aspect, the lower aspect being connected with the mortal part of the human constitution.
Thank you. So, you know, there's a lot in here. One of the main points is that they're the parents of the sun's form, Pushan. So you can see that, you know, within the intent or the will to be of the solar logos, that these two as a quality facilitated the appearance of the final form aspect of the sun, and along with it, of course, the entire form of the solar system, right? Also, I get a sense in here of the very nature of duality being introduced through this pair, and of the potential, along with the Rudras. There's some, to me, there's overlap in this higher and lower mind aspect in these two, right? I think it's interesting they're writing a ram in, which would be, of course, Aries, which initiates, you know, the cyclic, you know, space and time, and that in that duality is introduced. So this is all part of the involutional aspect of becoming. Okay, so in these four, we have the aspects of the one, Oya Ohu the Younger. In the Adityas, we have the sustainers of the solar divine life, which exists in all things. In the Vasus, we have the 5 elements, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. In the Rudras, we have Manas, the intellectual informing principles of man. And in the Asvins, we have the Kumaric mind or higher Manas and the mortal part of the human constitution, much like the Jiminian Castor and Pollux. These are the attributes called the Tridasha of Oya-Ohu the Younger. So any thoughts or questions about this group before we get back into the, or get into the commentary on verse 7? Anyone?
They're all speechless.
Okay, let's get into the A section of the commentary on verse 7, which references, "Behold, O Lanu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled, refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Oya-Ohu the Younger, the blank." So could we get a reader for the commentary, which starts in the middle of the page?
Antonella, can you, you're self-muted, can you read that for us, please? Okay, there you go.
Oh, thank you. Bright space, son of dark space, corresponds to the ray dropped at the first thrill of the new dawn into the great cosmic depths, from which it reemerges differentiated as Oya-Ohu the Younger, the new life, to become, to the end of the life cycle, the germ of all things. He is the uncorporeal man who contains in himself the divine idea, the generator of light and life, to use an expression of Philo Judeus.
Thank you, Antonella. Thoughts or questions about this? It's a pithy commentary, this. In verse 3, we learn that light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. Here, HPB reveals a further stage, wherein the solitary ray reemerges, now differentiated as Oya-Ohu the Younger. In these first segments, we see the genesis of bright space, who is Oya-Ohu the Younger. Who would ever think that our God is actually called bright space, the true name of our Logi? So we have darkness radiates light. That's the first coming in of this being who finally differentiates as Oya-Ohu the Younger. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ocean becomes radiant light, and then behold, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled, refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Oya-Ohu the Younger, the ineffable name. Okay. A key word in HPB's commentary is differentiated. In fact, Oya-Ohu the Younger is the first differentiation of the Manvantara. You know, again, you can take this at a local level, so, you know, our solar system, or at cosmic levels. This is the stage where Krishna's words, quote, "Having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain," are relevant, for that fragment is the central point of all units of consciousness, of all atoms of substance, as personified by the Adityas. He is what HPB calls the germ of all things, the central divine spark. And then that aspect is personified by the Adityas. In this statement, he is the incorporeal man who contains in himself the divine idea. We see that he also manifests universal mind, personified by the Asvins, and the Rudras, right? In the Asvins, we have the Kumaric mind, or the higher manas, the mortal part of the human constitution, and then the Rudras, the intellectual informing principles of man. Okay, on to the second half of the paragraph. And of course, jump in anytime you have a comment, thought, question, whatever. Can we get a reader, please, for this?
Hi, Jessica. Can you read that for us, please? I don't hear you. I hear something going on in the background, but let's move on to somebody else. Okay. Oops. Julie, can you read that? You're self-muted. There you go.
Am I starting? He is called?
Yes.
Yeah. He is called the blazing dragon of wisdom, because firstly, he is that which the Greek philosophers called a logos, the verbum of the thought divine, and secondly, because in esoteric philosophy, this first manifestation being the synthesis or the aggregate of universal wisdom, Oihahu, the Son of the Son, contains in himself the 7 creative hosts, the Sephiroth, and is thus the essence of manifested wisdom. He who bathes in the light of Oyahu will never be deceived by the veil of Maya.
Thank you. Any thoughts or questions on this section? As a synthesis of the aggregate of universal wisdom, Oyahu the Younger becomes the first differentiation of universal mind, right? Let's take a moment to read a section from the Theosophical Glossary on the Logos. I think you'll find it informing. Could we get a reader, please, for this section?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Logos. After Parabrahman, the one ineffable and unthinkable reality, comes the first or unmanifested Logos, corresponding to Paramatman in cosmos and Atman in man, the supreme monadic self in any hierarchy. Then, as an emanation from the former, comes the quasi-manifested or second Logos, corresponding to cosmic and human Buddhi, always envisaged as a feminine potency. And then from the former two proceeds the manifested, creative, or third Logos, corresponding to Mahat on the cosmic plane and Manas in the human constitution. Thus Logos is a center of unity and a being, which may exist in an unmanifest or manifest condition, but always derivative from the supreme mystery above it, to which must be added an intermediate state of partial or incipient manifestation. Man is sometimes spoken of as the third Logos, as it corresponds to Manas. Quote, this first Logos may be called, in the language of the old writers, either Eswara or Pratyagatma, or Sabda Brahman. It is called the verbum or the word by the Christians, and it is the divine Christos, who is eternally in the bosom of his Father. It is called Avalokiteshvara by the Buddhists. At any rate, Avalokiteshvara, in one sense, is the Logos in general. In almost every doctrine, they have formulated the existence of a center of spiritual energy, which is unborn and eternal, and which exists in a latent condition in the bosom of Paramatman at the time of the Pralaya, and starts as a center of conscious energy at the time of cosmic activity. It is the first gnatha, or the ego in the cosmos. And every other ego and every other self is but its reflection or manifestation. In its utmost nature, it is not unknowable as Brahman, but it is an object of the highest knowledge that man is capable of acquiring. On account of the universal analogies running throughout nature, every cosmic unit, such as a solar system or a sun, is an expression in itself of a minor series of first, second, and third logi. And this primordial triad through the third logos breaks into 7 offspring logi, which become the 7 solar logi.
Thanks, Scott. Any thoughts or questions about this description of the logos? I think it sheds some light on their nature. Here's a statue and a painting of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddhist idea of logos. For humans, the Atman is the microcosmic equivalent of the first logos, Oya Ohu, the elder. The human principle of Buddhi is equivalent to the second logos, Mulaprakriti, or divine feminine. And the monastic aspect is equivalent to the third logos, who is Oya Ohu, the younger. And of course, there's many other associations. In the description we just read of Avalokiteshvara can represent, I think HPB says that there are 2 levels of Avalokiteshvara, right? Okay. The actual definition, let's see, where are we here? Yeah. Actually, since the stanzas of Dzyan describe a solar systemic pralaya and manvantara rather than a universal maha pralaya, the last short paragraph is particularly relevant to these stanzas, right? Here where he says that every cosmic unit, such as a solar system, is an expression in itself of a minor series of first, second, and third logi, right? So it's good to keep in mind. The actual definition of logos in this description reads, logos is a center of unity in a being. It's interesting, isn't it? A center, it's not a being. It's a center of unity. You could also call it a unifying center. Center of unity in a being, which may exist in an unmanifest or manifest condition, but always derivative from the supreme mystery above it. So in the case of the first logos, which is Oya Ohu, the elder, it would be the absolute itself. So any thoughts or questions about this whole question of the logos? Okay, back to the commentary we've been analyzing. In theosophy, dragon is a term often used for the solar logos and its function as the verbum of its system. The adjective blazing leaves really no doubt about its identity with the solar logos. In our solar system, the 7 creative hosts are the 7 sacred planets, which are themselves expressions of the 7 vowels of Oya Ohu, sounding each as one of the 7 ray energies of our solar system. Whereas the sounded note of the solar logos is a synthesis of these 7 notes, which synthesis has the quality of the cosmic second ray. Remember, I think it was last time that we talked about how Oya Ohu can be can be sounded forth as 1 syllable, 3, or 7. Anything but the 5 that it seems like it should be pronounced as. right? So this is that singular syllable pronunciation would carry the, at least in our solar system, the quality of the cosmic second ray. So for a description of this, our own local blazing dragon of wisdom, let's take a look at an excerpt from the old commentary that appears at the end of Initiation Human and Solar, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Carrie, could you read this for us, please? You still with us?
Oops. You're self-muted, Carrie. There you go.
Okay, now. Excerpt from an esoteric catechism. Where mounts the ladder then? To the greatest Lord of all, before whom e'en that ancient one, Earth's planetary logos, bends in obeisance low, before whose throne of effulgent light, angels of highest rank, masters and lords of uttermost compassion, prostrate themselves and humbly bend, awaiting the word to rise. When sounds that word, and what transpires when it echoes through the spheres? That word sounds not till all is done, until the Lord of endless love deemeth the work correct. He uttereth then a lesser word that vibrateth through the scheme. The greater Lord of cosmic love, hearing the circling sound, addeth completion to the chord, and breatheth forth the whole. What will be seen, O pilgrim, on the way, when sounds that final chord? The music of the endless spheres, the merging of the seven, the end of tears, of sin, of strife, the shattering of forms, the finish of the ladder, the blending in the all, completion of the circling spheres and their entry into peace.
Thank you, Carrie. Any thoughts or questions about this? Notice how often the idea of the word is used in the sounding forth. Carrie, maybe you could write a, an exit symphony for this end of the solar.
I've tried many times.
Oh, that's you know.
I am trying. Yes, I'm always trying to do that.
Yeah, Carrie's and a composer of some renown. That's a safe comment, isn't it? Some renown.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Thank
very
you.
kind.
Okay. It's interesting that this excerpt actually describes the end, whereas what we're reading in this verse 7 is the beginning of the career, right? But you get a sense of the astonishing, refulgent glory, isn't that the term, of this singular being. Okay, back to the commentary. Could we get a reader for this next section of the commentary on A?
Gary, can you read that for us, please?
We'll start in the middle of the page there. Great, Gary.
Okay. Quan Sha Yin is identical with and an equivalent of the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara, and as such, he is an endogenous deity, like the Tetragrammaton and all the logoi of antiquity. It is only by some sects in China that he is anthropomorphized and represented with female attributes. When under his female aspect, he becomes Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, called the divine voice. The latter is the patron deity of Tibet and of the island of Puto in China, where both deities have a number of monasteries.
Thank you. So any thoughts or questions on this section? Let's take a look at the footnotes. First footnote references the term logi. Could we get a reader, just the footnote, please? Starting with hints.
Helen, can you read that for us, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't.
Okay, okay, okay. Damien, can you read that for us, please? You're self-muted. Okay, let's try again. Lori, can you read that for us, Lori?
Oh, no. Sorry.
No? Okay.
Good.
Nicholas, can you read that for us? All right, I'll read it. Hence, all the higher gods of antiquity are sons of the mother before they become those of the father. The logoi, like Jupiter or Zeus, son of Kronos Saturn, infinite time, or Kala, in their origin were represented as male-female. Zeus is said to be the beautiful virgin, and Venus is made bearded. Apollo is originally bisexual, so is Brahma Vak in Manu and the Puranas. Osiris is interchangeable with Isis, and Horus is of both sexes. Finally, St. John's vision in Revelation, that of the Logos, is now connected with Jesus. It is hermaphrodite, for he is described as having female breasts. So is the Tetragrammaton Jehovah, but they are two, oh wow.
Avalokiteshvara.
Thank you, in esotericism, the first and the second logos.
So any thoughts or questions about this idea of sexual duality? Philosophical androgyny can get pretty complex. I found this entry in the Theosophical Glossary on the hermaphrodite to be helpful in unraveling this. Can we get a reader, please?
And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Hermaphrodite, from the Greek Hermes and Aphrodite, the form and typical nature of both the god and goddess in one individual. Androgyn also relates to a dual sexual human being. Thus, the hermaphrodite embodies nature's universal polarity on its lower planes, which polarity is an emanation from the non-dual or non-bipolar mental and spiritual realms. In an abstract sense, this is a personification of the universal polarity in nature on its lower planes, wherein the so-called masculine and feminine principles are the opposing but coordinating agencies, often called positive and negative in their creative and generative aspects. The ancients taught the autogeneration of the gods, the one divine essence unmanifested, perpetually begetting a second self manifested, which second self, androgynous is in its nature, gives birth in an immaculate way to everything macro and microcosmical in the universe.
Thank you. So the key to the metaphor, the androgyne, lies in this last statement, right? This idea of the unmanifested divine essence is perpetually, interesting, begetting a manifested second self. It's self-generation or auto-generation, right? And hence, not only is the divine essence, androgynous. It's almost an inappropriate term because it really is before any duality, the divine essence. So if you can call that singularity, that unity, androgyny, yeah, you can say that, but it's really before the separation where duality comes into being, right? But even the second self, the androgynous self, is then self-generating. It, as is stated here, gives birth in an immaculate way to everything macro and microcosmical. We'll be looking at this idea even more deeply. Any thoughts or questions about this? The mother is, let's see, excuse me a minute. So, yeah, why are these primordial sons of the mother fatherless? The father aspect doesn't generate progeny because it is not manifest and is therefore not a singularity capable of generation, but rather stands as the hidden essence behind all manifestation. Verse 6 tells us, darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence. The mother is Mula Prakriti, or primordial substance. The first son, whether called Oyao the Younger, Avalokiteshvara, Quan Shai Yin, or Savek Kronos, is the creator God who initiates each generative manvantara. Let's look at the next footnote. Can we get a reader for this short footnote, which it references the term female attributes? And just read the part at the bottom.
Anna, can you read that for us, please? Okay. Britta, can you read that for us, please? Karsten, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Yeah, I can try.
Thank you.
The mother, Sophia, wisdom, was the mother of the Ogodot Aditi in a certain sense, with her 8 sons, is the Holy Ghost and the creator of all. As in the ancient systems, the Father is a far later invention. The earliest manifested Logos was female everywhere, the mother of the 7 planetary powers.
Thank you. So, Aditi, mentioned here, is Devamatri, mother of the gods, from which Oya-Ohu the Younger springs forth. Remember, re-emerges from the depths, now differentiated. So if there's no more comments on this A section, let's move on to the first part of the B section of the commentary. I think we're going to pull the plug right here. It's a natural stopping point. We're at 2:45. So I think that's enough for today. As I always say, it's a pleasure to host this webinar. I really enjoy our discussions, and thanks for attending. Our next webinar, our next Secret Doctrine webinar, is not on the 3rd Sunday, as is usual, but this time on the 2nd, which will be on November 10th. You'll get all the notices for that in advance. But in case you have it on your calendar, it's be on the 2nd. And the next webinar will be on the Manly Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, and that will occur on the 3rd of November, 3rd of November, which means that those two webinars will be separated by just a week, the 3rd and the 10th. So for those of you who will be joining us for the Secret Teachings of All Ages, see you on the 3rd. Otherwise, we'll see you all on the 10th of November. Thank you very much for attending.
Okay, Francis, one more thing. In Europe, I believe they changed times on the 27th of October, and here in the States, we do it on the evening of the 2nd of November. So both of those upcoming webinars on the 3rd of November and the 10th of November will be after the time has changed back to standard time for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so the webinars will be changing to 8 p.m. GMT.
Now that makes, for all of us going back to standard time, that means the webinars will be at the same time, because that hour later for GMT makes that change be at the same time, right? Because we'll be on standard time. Boy, that was clear as mud. But anyway, for those of you who are already on standard time, then you will have it will be an hour later. So, okay, until the 3rd, or the 10th, we'll see you then. And thanks again for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.